Hi, I'm Zach with Iglesia del Despertar, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video. This is a video that's part of a series of educational videos about ayahuasca and ayahuasca shamanism. Today we're going to talk about the different levels of ayahuasca shamanism that exist in Peru, using the terminology that Peruvians often use. And it's important to point out that there isn't like a governing body of shamans in Peru, or anywhere for that matter. There's no one giving out certificates and so forth. But there is terminology that is used in Peru. And so we'll kind of go through that terminology, and the terminology indicates levels of experience, and also indicates what kind of plants the Peruvian shaman is working with. So the first and might seem most obvious thing that we hear in Peru is ayahuasquero. An ayahuasquero literally means someone who works with ayahuasca. And if that term is used simply as the term for the shaman, it can indicate that that shaman is actually at the lowest level of training. And what that means is that the ayahuasquero, or simple ayahuasquero, has not done any or very many plant or tree dietas. It is the foundational practice, this practice of dieta, that really allows an ayahuasquero to move up the scale and create a situation for helping their guests and for healing. So if a ayahuasquero doesn't have any dietas, they simply are able to put together the ceremony space and sing Icaros. This might be confusing because from the outside looking in, and for the inexperienced, that's what ceremony is all about, is creating the space and singing Icaros. But that's really not all that can be done in the ceremony. And that leads us to kind of the second level, which is curandero. This curandero is someone who has done many plant and tree dietas such that they can heal. Curandero literally means healer. And it is through these plant dietas that their physical and energetic body has been, for lack of a better term, purified and opened up such that they can be a channel for the healing energy that comes through when they work with these master plants beyond just ayahuasca. Now this practice of dieta is absolutely foundational to ayahuasca shamanism, and is often ignored and misunderstood by Westerners. And it's a big subject, and it's something that we will delve into at a later point. But right now we're talking about these levels, and so curandero is an ayahuasquero who has done several plant and tree dietas such that they can heal. The next level is maestro. A maestro, it literally means master, and this is someone who has done extensive training with both ayahuasca, but more importantly, extensive training with plant and tree dietas. On the point of dieta, again, it's foundational. When you go down to Peru and say, hey, I want to study ayahuasca shamanism, they say, look, it's dieta, dieta, dieta. They don't say ayahuasca, ayahuasca, ayahuasca. And my teacher said, look, you can drink ayahuasca 100 times. It's not nearly as powerful as doing one plant or tree dieta and then doing several ayahuasca ceremonies around that. That combination is more powerful than doing 100 ayahuasca ceremonies alone. So a maestro is literally someone who's spent years studying the medicine and working with both ayahuasca and doing all kinds of plant and tree dietas. and it takes quite a significant amount of time. Now the thing about Maestro, and this is kind of the it's not the highest level of shamanism in Peru, but it's certainly the highest or the most commonly regarded kind of the goal for people who are studying the medicine to become Maestro. And it's interesting because there are a lot of confusing statements about Maestro on a couple of points. One is the amount of time it takes. I've heard the commentary from some people saying, oh, it takes 7 to 10 years to become a Maestro. Maybe. I have evidence to the contrary, and particularly as it relates to gringos. Gringos have a very big advantage over Peruvians who are studying the medicine in the sense that we have more time to dedicate strictly to the medicine. So we, in my case, for example, I was able to go down to Peru and do nothing else but dieta and ayahuasca and help people through retreats for 4.5 years straight with very little break. That's, for a jungle Peruvian, that's very, very difficult because they oftentimes have families. And so, for them to go and do a dieta, which is a very time-consuming process, it means they are not working and they're not providing for their family. So it's a huge sacrifice for them to do that. And so therefore they oftentimes have to spread out their training over a much longer period of time. Whereas gringos can go down and just really go for it all at once. So that commentary of 7 to 10 years, I don't think is completely true. And in fact, in personal experience, it's not true. The fastest that I've heard it being done, or that title of being received, has been 2 years, and that person again was a gringo who just went to town in terms of doing dietas and their training just for 2 years straight, doing nothing else, just really going quote unquote balls to the wall. So the other thing to keep in mind too is that Maestro of what? So for example, my teacher is a Maestro Ayahuasquero, he's a Maestro Sananguero, he's a Maestro Palero, and he's a Maestro Vegetalista. That's a lot of stuff to study and to become a Maestro of, right? And for example, in my case, my focus was ayahuasca and trees. I really didn't get deeply into the smaller plants, and nor did I get into, I delved into tobacco a little bit, but my thing was just two areas of study. And so it's really important to understand that different lineages will have different ideas as to what a Maestro is. Sometimes it's just going to be focused on ayahuasca, and that's going to reduce the amount of time to get to that title. And some will say, hey, if you don't have ayahuasca, tobacco, sanango, trees, and the small plants, then you're not Maestro. So there can be some confusion around that term of Maestro. Finally, I want to wrap things up by talking about the highest level, and in Peruvian shamanism, that's Banco. Banco literally means bank, and it's like the Banco is the bank of medicine. He's able to hold so much medicine, and actually, support a bunch of maestros under him. Bancos are really rare, and I would say that during my time in Peru I never came across one, and my sense is that they don't really look for a lot of attention either. They're not really interested. It's kind of like the yogis in India. They kind of go off and hide. They're not really interested in dealing with the fame and so forth that might come from exposure to the general public. So if you find one of those, that's really awesome. Take full advantage of that. But so what we have is, again, the lowest level, we have ayahuasquero, then we have curandero, and then we have maestro, and then banco. Those are the levels of shamanism that I'm aware of in Peru. This is part one on this subject. The next video that we're going to talk about is to kind of what questions or what things you might look for in a shaman, so that you can make a better judgment call when you're approaching the subject of retreat centers and ayahuasca ceremonies and so forth. So thank you again for taking the time to watch this, and hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.